Yo, what's going on E7 fam? I'm Sue, and in this video, I want to talk about the Epic 7 Origin update. With the hindsight of a week behind me to stew upon it, I kind of wanted to take some time to talk about the things that I think are really good in the April 10th Origin update, and I also want to highlight some of the biggest issues facing Epic 7 in 2025 that weren't really addressed in this update. So sit back, relax, and listen to me yap about the good and bad of the current state of our beloved game for the next 10 or 20 minutes. If you want my raw reaction to the Origin announcement, you could do so by checking out the livestream VOD, which I'll link in this video's description. Just know that it might be missing a lot of audio due to a miscommunication with Smoggate, which is something I talk about in my most recent community post. It's also why this video is a week late, as opposed to like a day or two after the original announcement. But hey, that's okay. Again, I've had a week to think about this and really focus in on what I want to say about this patch. So let's jump into it. We'll talk about things in the order that they are revealed in the actual Origin trailer. Right off the bat, I just want to say that the decision to make the next story element a prequel to Epic 7, setting us in the 6th world of Orbis, is actually a very, very good decision. For a while now, players have complained that the main story hasn't been very good. And since Episode 3, we've strayed pretty far from the game's original story and setting. This game was originally supposed to be about the Celestial War and the various gods and goddesses fighting for the very soul of the planet Orbis. Bringing back the original story while also fleshing out and filling in a lot of plot holes that have crept up over the years, again, really smart decision. Making Crow the main character alongside of a familiar face in Helaeg Lance's Victorica is a very good decision. Crow is one of the most beloved heroes by the community, and I've often heard players wish that he was the main character instead of Raz. You know, I get it. He's really cool, and his writing and motivations make him feel a lot more human than Raz. But honestly, that's kind of the point. Raz isn't human. Crow is. Speaking of Raz, let's talk about him. The new Genesis Raz is super interesting for a multitude of reasons. One of the core themes of Epic 7's story so far has been how Raz has gradually been losing his divinity in order to learn more about the human experience. It's what makes him super interesting as a character, at least to me, and I can't wait to see what they do with him going forward. Will he be an unfeeling, emotionless character in this episode? We've already seen in the past that Raz thinks very little about divulging certain information to his allies, such as Vildred, and we've all seen how that comes back to bite him in the ass later on. From a writing standpoint, making someone else the protagonist other than Raz is also a somewhat genius thing to do, but since this is Epic 7 and its writing team we're talking about here, I'm thinking it's probably more of a coincidence. But let me explain to you why I think it is such a genius decision. Metal Gear Solid 2 was one of the most divisive games back in the day for the controversial decision to make Raiden the game's protagonist instead of Solid Snake, who is one of gaming's most beloved main characters. Director Hideo Kojima defended this decision by saying the only way that he could develop Snake as a character further was for people to see the legend from a different perspective. Up until this point, you as a player have only experienced the game through Raz's eyes. Seeing Raz through Crow or Victorica's eyes will give you a new sense of appreciation for the character, and for that I am thankful, even if I think it's probably just a coincidence. Moving on, let's talk about voice acting. Voice acting being a prominent feature of this update makes me very, very happy. I'm basically the E7 content creator that cares the most about the subject at this point after all. I'm hoping that we'll get an English dub for sure. Hopefully it's not just a KR or JP only dub. I'm very curious to hear certain key performances, such as that of Vildred's, that's David Errigo Jr. I want to see how he's improved over the last 7 years, now that he has had more experience and prominent roles under his belt. And then obviously I would like to hear things like Noel Ill's performance as Diane, so on and so forth. Moving on, let's talk about the changes to the Sanctuary in Epic 7's Origin update. I think overall, these changes are ones that we've been asking for a very long time, even though it might not seem like it. Let's talk about the big change first in regards to the new Heart of Orbis, which, from talking to other content creators, it feels like they missed a couple of things here, like they didn't understand how the system works. So previously, the way this thing worked would be you would get sky stones every couple of hours, but that has now been tossed out and overhauled, allowing for you to get things like leaves, charms, Mullagora, and more. The Heart of Orbis also features a monthly reward that could be things like Mullagora, unknown slates, bottles of knowledge, a random ML 5-star, or gear with absolutely bonkers substats. So in case you missed it, some people think you just always get the crazy gear with the substats, right, as part of this thing. No, that is one of the once per month rewards that you can actually redeem from this whole system. And I've seen people upset that you could only get one item per month amongst all of the incredible rewards, but I'm not personally bothered by it, at least not yet, right? I've personally been asking Smilegate for years at this point to make things like Artena's crafting event a monthly thing to help out new players or players that are further behind, right? They needed to find ways to allow new and free-to-play players to acquire gear and characters that they need to play the game. There needed to be something to help these players out, something like a comeback mechanism. And while this isn't perfect, it does help alleviate gear concerns. It does make it so that it is easier for players to acquire ML5s in a more timely fashion. Every little bit helps on this issue. As for the minor changes to the Sanctuary, I think these are mostly very good as well. Removing dispatch missions and rolling the rewards into Arena, I think is overall a good change for the game, as these were largely tedious and added little to the core gameplay loop. Removing Breath of Orbis, also a pretty good change in my opinion. Getting rid of the ability to craft gear below item level 85 is mostly a good change. I say mostly because crafting below item level 85 gear makes it so that new players aren't confused when they first start out and end up wasting resources on equipment they won't use. That said, there are certain things like Counterset Tori where an item level 27 helmet is the best in slot option, so taking away the decision to be able to craft that does hurt some players in the long run. Honestly though, they should just make it so that an item level 27 helmet isn't the best in slot option for certain characters, then we won't really have this issue, and then I won't really have any complaints. After the Sanctuary, we come to the new Orbis Guide, which I think is a godsend for any new players that are picking up the game. Epic 7, despite how you watching this may feel as an in-franchise player, is actually quite a difficult game to get into as a new player, as it's not obvious what to do if you're not already familiar with these style of gear grinder gacha games. Other gacha games in the space hold your hand for quite a long time until you learn all of its various systems and mechanics, but Epic 7 really hasn't had something like this in the past 7 years. This is, in my opinion, a very good change for the game overall. Speaking of good changes, let's talk about Catalyst integration. Removing Catalyst and Epic Catalyst in favor of class-based currency to upgrade various heroes is an amazing quality of life change. There's simply too much bloat in Epic 7's economy and UI, so most of the changes to streamline that are very welcome. Since the Dash Pass event last September, every single month in a meeting that I've had with Smilegate, I have begged them to keep Goblamu's treasure storage as a permanent event because it is too good of a resource for onboarding new players. This new feature, Ogre's Army, is exactly the treasure storage feature, just under a new name. This is one of the biggest W's of the entire patch in my opinion, as I truly believe the new player experience and catering to new and casual players is incredibly important for the overall health and longevity of any game. Again, thank you Smilegate for finally putting this into the game. The changes to Labyrinth are also nice. I honestly have hated Labyrinth for so long, and it isn't because I think that the content is old or boring or any of that. It's because I'm tired of remembering how many Labyrinth compasses and bug charms I have. If I forget to claim a bug charm near the end of the month, I might not be able to clear Nightmare Labyrinth, and that just basically costs me a really powerful piece of gear. It's happened more than once with my busy schedule. Just let me go in, get my quest done for the month, and get out. It is an amazing quality of life change in my opinion. Removing ancient coins from Labyrinth is also fine by me, although I know some of you Euphine farmers out there probably don't like the change. I personally like the idea of having all of the charms needed to be available in one single shop under one single currency, in this case conquest points. Having charms be on a 2-currency system between conquest points and ancient coins is a relic from the first year of Epic 7, where rings and necklaces were extremely rare and you couldn't even craft them. So honestly, good to see a flawed system is finally fixed. Next up, let's talk about the UI. The new UI quick menu is something that honestly should have been added to Epic 7 4 years ago. The UI bloat in this game has been so atrocious for so long. It's so bad that it actually caused one of my friends and former guildmates to quit the game. I'm being serious here. Count how many clicks it takes you to do basic functions in this game, and you'll realize it's usually 4 or 5 button presses most of the time. Navigating the menu doesn't really feel good, and honestly made the game feel like it disrespects your time more than it already does sometimes. Here's to hoping that this new UI change is actually really good, especially when I see things like the equipment crafting screen. After the user interface, we come to the class summon system, which is perhaps one of the most incredible changes that is coming with this update. This is a system that will allow you to focus on only summoning heroes and artifacts of one specific class, such as only knight heroes and artifacts. They specifically showcased a nondescript artifact that very clearly has the same effect text as Rocket Punch Gauntlet, which is Ikarina's artifact from the Espa collab. We'll have to wait until April 24th to see all the details for the system, but if Smilegate does this right and doesn't screw it up, this should help alleviate some of the general imbalance between many players in PvP game modes. Artifacts like 3F and Guardian Ice Crystals are simply too strong and important in the current state of the game, and many heirs will need access to a lot of copies in order to remain competitive. If this system doesn't launch with 3F or Guardian Ice Crystals available on day 1, then I would consider that a total failure. If you can't call upon class summons at any time like you can with story summons, I would consider that a total failure. The last thing we need as a player base is another custom group summon, something that comes around like twice a year, right? That's just there to kind of sap you of your bookmarks before a limited or a collab. We don't need that, right? We need artifacts now. The one thing I will give Smilegate is if they want to make it so new collab artifacts aren't immediately available underneath this system, and they want to have a 6-month grace period before it appears in the banners, that's fine. But for right now, players need artifacts like 3F or Guardian Ice Crystals, or they simply cannot compete at the highest level. The system is supposed to help players. I pray that it does on day 1. Now that my mini rant is over, let's move on now and talk about Trial of Constellations, aka Spirit Altar Epic Hell, as it was previously known in the now cancelled Awaken Potential update. As I've said many times on streams, you can't stop developers from doing the things that they want to do. If you won't let them nerf your favorite heroes, well then they'll just power creep your favorite heroes and make them unusable instead. The same applies here with this content. We, as a community, canceled the Epic Hell Spirit Altar game mode when we canceled the Awaken Potential update. Rather than scrap all that work, those assets have been repurposed for what is being described as the ultimate PvE endgame content. This game mode will apparently require you to invest in key units and yield very powerful equipment rewards. Honestly, sounds great to me. I love hard PvE content, as evidenced by all of the Abyss guides here on this channel. Obviously, we're going to tackle that content when it comes out with various different guides, so make sure you're subscribed to the channel to see those when they are available. And yes, we'll try to use Commander Lorena if it is at all possible. The last 2 changes to talk about here in the Origin update involve World Arena, starting with the hero support system. This is a great change to help people get into World Arena. Something like 90% of the player base doesn't really touch the game mode outside of trying to get the skin at the end of each season. I feel like part of the reason for that is because they don't own many of the game's best characters. It's why I felt like for a long time that gear and character acquisition are the 2 biggest problems that face Epic 7 and its community right now. With the Dash Pass event being released last September, players got a PvE starter pack with Brieg and Tamarin. My hope was, since that was announced, that players would get a PvP starter pack with something like Selene and Paldius. But, well, this hero support system is obviously just way better, because rather than just getting only Selene and Paldius, you could just choose those plus another 8 heroes. You could just take any 10 heroes that you want. My only major questions on this system are twofold. Number 1, How good is the equipment on the pre-made heroes that we select from our 10? If it's too strong, players will forego gearing their own units to use the pre-built ones. And if it's too weak, it doesn't really fix the situation we currently have where World Arena is simply too difficult to get into. And number 2, how often can you change your roster of 10 pre-built heroes? The metagame at the start of a season is drastically different than the metagame at the end of a season. So if you're locked into whatever 10 heroes you pick for an entire season, it will simply encourage players to not use them until near the very end of the season, which will further homogenize the format for the last week or so and not really get people actively participating in the gameplay mode. Anyways, great idea. Let's see how they execute on it. Finally, we come to Lunatic Draft, which we will absolutely test on stream a day or two after it goes live in a Saturday Showdown stream here on the channel. So again, if you want to check that out, feel free to do so. Originally, when this system was announced, I wasn't really a fan of this system since I expected it to be a best of 3 match where 10 heroes from the previous match were banned along with 1 or 2 pre-bans per player. I thought it would make games 1 and 3 of a best of 3 set very homogenized, very samey, with only game 2 really being different. To see that the system is now a best of 7 with a total of 38 bans, that's 14 from each player plus the 10 from the previous match being banned, that's wild to me. If you remove the 38 best heroes from the gameplay pool, it will have massive repercussions on what is actually viable. Simply removing 1 or 2 characters sometimes feels like you roll back the game an entire patch, right? 38 characters being removed from the pool, honestly, I can't even fathom the amount of mental stress that it will put on players during this year's Epic 7 World Championship. With that many pre-bans, it's going to make for some absolutely wild matches, and as a spectator, I'm all here for it. My initial thoughts, though, of it being not necessarily super fun or great for the player, that remains to be seen. After Lunatic Draft, that concludes all of my thoughts on the features that were announced in the Origin update. I'll give my thoughts on the characters Crow, Victorica, and everyone else in another video. But to wrap up this video, I want to talk about some of the challenges I feel like are currently facing Epic 7 that this update failed to address. Number 1, lack of repeatable PvE content. While there is a lot of great quality of life in this patch, aside from Trial of Constellations, there really isn't any content here. This was a 30-minute presentation that basically boiled down to a ton of quality of life changes, as well as a new story chapter. And that's not nothing, but we should have expected that anyway. Episode 5 wrapped over half a year ago. The only thing that was added that actually gives you something to do is this Trial of Constellations, and, you know, if it gets solved, like the last season of Rift in a single day, then there's nothing really to do. You'll just be going back to background battling yet again. Number 2, the current state of PvP. I am primarily a World Arena player, but some of this may apply to how you feel about Guild Wars and Arena as well. There is a balance patch coming with this update, as well as new Battle Frenzy changes for World Arena, but I don't know if that fixes the state of the game. Right now, games just feel like they are total blowouts most of the time. Powerful ML5s just completely dictate the entire pace of the match, and the ways to counter stuff are specific limited characters or Moonlight heroes that you may not have, especially as a newer player. On top of that, ban pick protection, in my opinion, makes for some really unfun and degenerate strategies like Harsetti that you'll see nearly every single game. The current state of PvP is just not fun, at least in my opinion. Number 3, character acquisition. While the hero support system that was proposed in this patch is great, letting players get characters easier would have been even better. While the new Heart of Orbis changes do let you get a random ML5 once every few months, it is a drop in the bucket of a much larger issue. If E7 wants to be taken seriously as a PvP game, it has to start making its roster more accessible to the average player. As it stands, most people on ladder are missing half the roster or more, which means oftentimes they'll lose on the spot if they don't have those 1 or 2 specific counters, which are most likely limiteds or ML5s. They need to start making important meta counters appear at lower rarities so more people can actually use them, or again, just let people get characters easier. The only reason I feel like they don't do this is because their primary monetization model is selling you ML5s and limited characters. Here's an idea on how to make money, Smilegate. Make skins, price them at $20, and people will buy them. Not this like $100+ crap that we pulled recently with the Tamarin skin. Put out affordable skins and, more importantly, affordable packs. And this leads us into number 4. Monetization in this game is absolutely horrible. Flat out horrible. $60 to $120 for a Tamarin skin is not good. $100 for 28 Mystic Summons is not good. 95% of the things that are in the shop are just not good value. Any other game on the market outside of maybe Fate Grand Order feels like it has way better monetization. I feel like $20 in Shift Up's Nikke buys me so much more. I get for $20 a premium skin, 25 summons, a 4 to 5 star summon ticket, XP, weapon materials, all of it. $20 from your biggest competitor. It's insanity how little I feel like I get for $20 in Epic 7. And finally, number 5, and perhaps the most important one, gearing. All of it. The whole gearing system in this game is just bad. RNG when you craft a piece. RNG when you roll a piece. Not having enough gold to roll a piece. Not having enough charms to roll a piece. More RNG if you want to stat swap something with modification gems. Can't experiment with builds because you have to pay millions of gold to unequip and move equipment around. It is crazy how bad this system has been for as long as it's been. It's been like, what, 5 years since we had our last major update to the gearing system with reforges and modification gems? I often think about how they cannot get this system right, and the more I think about it, the more it starts to feel intentional. If you could actually get good gear, well then what PvE content is there besides just grinding gear? If you could actually get good gear, you could actually progress in World Arena and climb the ladder, and then you might not necessarily need to pull for units. Is that the case? I leave that to you to decide. I know it's a super cynical take, but it's one that I keep coming back to the more I think about the gearing system and why they've left it in such an atrocious state for so long. My genuine hope is that 2025 is the year that Epic 7 turns things around. The Origin update is very promising, but it is far from perfect. I will continue to stay optimistic, but if there are problems in this game, I'm not going to hesitate to call Smilegate out on it. We, as a community, deserve better.